Welcome back. I'm Chris Kilgore, Writing Resource Coordinator for the School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Arlington. And in this brief video, I'm going to finish off our tutorial on policy writing by talking a little bit about how we're supposed to cite laws. APA's guidance on citing laws is totally different from its guidance on citing most other sources. I'm going to start off with explaining how to compose a reference entry, and then I'm going to show how to use that reference entry to understand what needs to go in an in-text citation. In this presentation, I'm working on the assumption that you've already chosen the policy you want to talk about, so you'll know which policy you want to be citing. And that means you can start off by composing a reference entry that would go at the end of your document. For federal laws, if you've got a U.S. law that governs the entire United States, you're going to want to start by building a reference entry, and the first thing we have to do is locate where that policy is in the U.S. Code. Okay? APA says we want to be citing the most current version of the law, and usually out there on the internet there's 10 or 20 different versions of the law circulating around, so APA says cite the most current version for the law. In order to do this, this is a little bit of a complex process, so I'm going to point you to a resource called the APA-style blog that will provide detailed step-by-step instructions for finding your specific law in the U.S. Code. Okay, and I'll provide information about that at the end of this video. For now, it's important to just track down the name of the policies. So the name of one policy that somebody was using for one of these projects is the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. Okay, it's worth noticing that of 1993 is actually part of the name of the law. So that's part of the name. That's the thing that goes first in our reference entry. Once you've used that kind of information to locate where the law is in the U.S. Code, the second piece of information that will go in the reference list is the title number of the U.S. Code, an abbreviation that shows what source you're drawing upon. Here that's USC because we're referring to the U.S. Code. So in your citation you will have Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, comma, 29, because that's the title number, and USC because this is a federal law and you've located it in the U.S. Code. So now we have several of our elements of the reference entry in place. Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, 29 USC. Next, we're going to want to note which section numbers within that title correspond to this specific law. Again, this is information that you will locate when you find it in the U.S. Code using the instructions that I'll provide at the end of this presentation. So this particular law is found in 2601 through 2654. Okay, so in our reference entry, Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, comma, 29 USC, and then we'll have two of these funny little section number abbreviations. You can actually, in the final version of this presentation that you can download, you can copy and paste these little section number things directly from this presentation and paste them into your paper. Just make sure to select text only when you paste them in, and they'll come in looking exactly like that. So I have two section numbers because we have multiple sections, 2601 to 2654. Make sure you include the full range where that law is located. Here's the tricky part. Last element in the reference entry for a federal law is the year of the current edition of the U.S. Code. Not the year the policy was passed, which is 1993, the year of the current edition of the code. At the time when this information was compiled here, it was 2006. I suspect it's been updated since then. I think the most current version is 2016, but check when you go to the U.S. Code and locate your law, check what the current version of the U.S. Code is. Okay? This is a complete reference entry for a federal law. The name of the law, the title number and the abbreviation for U.S. Code, the section numbers where it's located, and the year of the U.S. Code. That is a complete reference entry for a federal law. You don't need anything else. All right, so we can use that reference entry to figure out what we put in the in-text citation when you use this in your document. In the in-text citation for a federal law, if you're not quoting, if you're just referring to it, you're going to want to use the name of the law and the year of the U.S. Code. So remember, in the reference list entry, we had the name of the law, some other information, and we had this year of the U.S. Code. Notice that in the reference entry, it's only the U.S. Code's year that appears in parentheses, and that indicates that that's the year of the source when we use it in our in-text citation. So an in-text citation at the end of a sentence, suppose I say, and the law does some stuff to make things better. In parentheses at the end of the sentence, I'm going to include the name of the law, Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, and the year of the U.S. Code, comma, 2006. This is going to look a little weird because we have a name that's including a year. So make sure you have both of those names. Now, when you want to incorporate the name of the law into your sentence, you're going to bring the name out of the parentheses. According to the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, and then parentheses, 2006, the year of the U.S. Code, comma, individuals can do something or other that. Individuals qualify for something this way, right? So you have two choices about how to integrate it in. Now, if you do need to quote the policy, you will add an additional component, and that will be the section number that you're quoting from, possibly with some additional paragraph information. You'll be able to find more information about how exactly to do that in the resources that I'm going to provide at the end of the presentation here. All right, so you may be thinking, but I don't have a federal law, I have a state or a local law, a state law, a city law. Well, I got to tell you, APA provides no specific guidance on state or local laws. So I recommend using the federal law guidelines as sort of a template, and do your best. So when you compose your reference entry, instead of saying USC, you'll be saying whatever it is that the state uses to record its laws. You'll provide whatever title numbers and section numbers you can find within the state law information. Do your best there. Use the federal guidance as a template. I don't yet have good guidance from APA. The APA style manual actually just says go refer to the Blue Book, which is the standard citation methods for legal sources. And honestly, the Blue Book is pretty complex and confusing, so I don't want to point you to go there. For now, I would say use the federal law guidelines as a template. Basically, all of your instructors will know that this is a common problem or issue, and they are not going to be too concerned if you don't have it 100% perfect down to the last comma if you're citing laws. Everybody knows that APA's recommendations for this are a little bit glib. Alrighty, I'm going to cover a few common problems, frequently asked questions, and then I'll provide the resources that you can use to locate more information. So, common problems. A lot of folks come to me and say, hey, my policy is too big, I don't know how to cover anything, and we've discussed this a little bit earlier on. Basically, it's acceptable to zero in on the provisions in a policy that directly influence or should have influenced the specific social problems that you're dealing with here. Occasionally your instructor might say, well, we've got the wrong policy. It's important to choose a policy that directly addresses the social problem we're discussing and to figure out what parts of the policy are more important to discuss. It's possible to kind of get off track there. So make sure that we're taking the time to cover the exact social policy we want to talk about and the parts of the policy that directly addressed that problem. Last but not least, some people will worry, hey, my policy hasn't passed yet or it just passed this year. Well, you won't have the empirical data about its effectiveness, so we're going to have to make an argument about how well it looks like it will work. This might include feasibility information. This might include information about whether the goals appear to be in good faith and accord with social work principles. So you might compare the kinds of things the policy is doing with the Social Work Code of Ethics and say, hey, you know what? This policy's goals aren't even really ethical according to our standards. That might be a good way to critique a policy like this. For the reference list, there are some special rules for where to find the text of proposed policies, and for that, I will point you to some other resources. Now, the list of resources on this page include links that you can use in the downloadable version of the presentation to directly access the resources I'm showing you here. We have the Social Work Writing Guide, which includes a section on common assignments in social work, and there you can find specific guidance of the kind that I've been providing throughout this presentation on the specific genres of social work writing, the policy analysis paper and the advocacy letter or letter to a legislator. I've also have a link here to the Purdue OWL, which is my favorite resource for quick references to APA. That's the Purdue Online Writing Lab hosted by Purdue University. It has a very nifty APA style guide that's very easy to navigate. Also, we have a link to what Brooke was showing you. You have a link to the UTA Library's overview of and tutorial on how to use Microsoft Word to do APA formatting. So if you've had trouble getting Word to do what you want it to do, this is the place to go. We also have Brooke's library guide for social work policy classes specifically. There's a link directly to her guide that she showed you in the previous video. Also, I have a link to the APA-style blog, which has the guide to legal sources. It includes all kinds of fun stuff, court cases, executive orders, whatever you need to do that's legal in nature. Look for the sections in here on finding federal statutes and citing and references for federal statutes. That'll cover the information I just covered a second ago. Last but not least, you are welcome to come and talk to me about any aspects of the writing process, and if you're having trouble finding sources, please consult Brooke, our social sciences library. She has contact information in the reference guide that she provided for our presentation here today. Thank you all for stopping by. Feel free to come visit either of us or get in touch via email if you have any questions.